Hi, my name is Marie Cruz, and I chose to focus more on the heroic tales that we read this semester, and even more specifically, I focused more on the Odyssey and Oedipus the King, or also known as Oedipus Rex. For this semester of ancient Greek and medieval cultures, by far my favorite stories to read were the heroic tales. So these heroic tales were the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is a story of a powerful, almost godlike man who ultimately, despite his efforts, was not able to achieve his goal of becoming immortal after witnessing the death of his very close friend Enkidu. The Odyssey, which is the story of this witty war hero with a huge ego who tries all he can do to get home, but along the way he meets many obstacles. Beowulf, which is the story of a strong leader with confidence in himself who fights many monsters, but sadly this does end in his death. And Oedipus Rex, or Oedipus the King, which is the story of a king who is so blind to his own faults, it leads to his own downfall. So I chose to focus more on the Odyssey and Oedipus Rex because I found it interesting how these two tales were both from the ancient Greek culture, but they tell very different stories and have different characters and have different themes attached to them. I also found it interesting how the two main characters, Odysseus and Oedipus, had different fates in their story. I do think this has to do with the different themes, but I also think that their character traits ultimately lead to their fates, where Odysseus has a more happier and triumphant ending, and Oedipus has a more tragic ending. Um, this can also be associated with the cultural differences and the different time periods that these stories occurred in. I do know that Oedipus Rex occurred before the Odyssey, so maybe that could be a trait as well. So the two main themes that appeared to be very common in the Odyssey was revenge and loyalty. So revenge is seen often throughout the Odyssey, and some examples include Poseidon, who was getting revenge on Odysseus after Odysseus encounters his son Polyphemus, which is the Cyclops. Telemachus wanting to get revenge on the suitors when his father returns to Ithaca, and Odysseus himself wanting to get revenge on the suitors after shooting the arrow through the 12 holes of the axes. So loyalty is also a common theme that we see, and this is seen through Odysseus, through the fact that even though he hasn't been home in years, like it's been so long that his son Telemachus is already an adult, but he's still willing to try to get back home and try to get back to Penelope. Penelope also exhibits this trait as over the years she's tried her best to stay loyal to Odysseus instead of, going off and picking a new suitor. Um, Being intelligent or being quick thinking is also a character trait, but I also think it's part of one of the main themes, as this is seen throughout the story where Odysseus uses his quick thinking to get out of the trouble that he gets into, and Penelope also shows her quick thinking when she tries to stall the suitors by telling them that she would make a robe on her loom, but later she was found unweaving it. So some of the character traits of Odysseus that I think contributed to his success was his strength, which allowed him to take care of himself. And again, he's very intelligent and witty and quick thinking, which allowed him to get out of many troubles. He's very prideful and courageous. I think this also helped him get through his events and his pride. This was a more negative trait, and this did often get him into trouble, but again, his quick thinking got him out of it. So the main themes of Oedipus the King were blindness, I think, or the main theme in general. So blindness was very common in this tale where Oedipus would hear things or put information together, but he simply refused to believe that this was true. One of the examples that I saw was that after hearing the story of how Laius dies, it looked like something in his brain clicked to where he did think it was him who killed Laius, but he assured himself that maybe it was just a coincidence and it was someone else. But he did learn that Laius died by bandits, and he did think that maybe he was somehow involved with it, but in the end he ignored it and refused to believe it was him. Jocasta helped encourage this behavior because she would constantly support Oedipus, which even further allowed him to be blind to his own faults. Fate was also a common theme, so where Oedipus keeps blaming fate to his curse on the kingdom, but I honestly think it was just his character traits that made him blind, and his own ignorance that made him blind to what was happening. So leading into that, Oedipus's main character traits are blindness and ignorance. Again, blindness and ignorance prevents Oedipus from seeing the truth, and the fact that he refuses to listen, I think it ultimately led to his downfall. So even though fate was mentioned a lot in this story, and he did blame his misfortunes to fate, I do think it was his own fault. And also leading into that, his stubbornness was also leading into that. His blindness and his ignorance and his stubbornness also led him to the path to his own downfall. So both of these characters, Odysseus and Oedipus, were part of the ancient Greek culture, and because of this, I think they had the same traits that were part of the ancient Greek culture, which were strength, determination, and good leader qualities. However, because of differences in their character traits, where Odysseus was more clever, witty, and even though he was prideful, he was able to get out of his situations, and Oedipus was ignorant and blind, and even though he was a good leader, this still led to his downfall. So I think that these vastly different character traits led to their endings, where Odysseus had a happier ending or a more triumphant ending, and Oedipus had a more tragic ending, and this was basically his tragic tale. And these are the references I used for my paper, and that is the end.